Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 372. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're honored to have with us the internationally renowned author of the Moscow Nights Trilogy, Beth H Macy. Beth.
Hi, Barney. It's a great introduction. Thank you.
You're a Navy officer, you're a therapist, you're an artist, you're an author. I guess my first question for you, Beth, is uh, share a little bit about your diverse background and how did your career path lead you to writing, being a spy novel author?
I love it. Um, it basically, I believe in living life to the fullest. And I started out, I was supposed to be a math teacher. That was what I was groomed for. I was going to go to school, be a math teacher. And I did. I graduated with a major in math and chemistry and taught for a very short period of time because I thought, this is not what I want. But then I had to find out what there was. Because at my college, when I asked them what I could do with a math degree, they said I could teach or I could become an actuary. And actuary sounded really boring. Sorry, actuarians,
Hmm.
yeah, to me. And so I went to be a teacher and it just wasn't fitting. So I joined the Navy because it was join the Navy, see the world. It's not just a job, it's an adventure. Um, hook, line, and sinker. There I go. But I wanted to do something that would be responsible, that would teach me a trade, right? So I'd come back and I'd be able to do something. Well, when I was in the Navy, I did stuff that was ultra hush hush. My dad used to say, "You can tell me." I'd say, "No, I'd have to kill you." And so when I got out, it didn't parlay into, job offers I thought would be there, right? But I saw there was this thing called high tech at that time, and I thought, wow, yeah, that's new. It pays well because I hadn't earned much as a teacher in the Navy, and so I'm going to go into high tech. So I went into Raytheon's job fair, and they kicked me out. Said you don't have enough experience, and I was hired by someone who hired me because he wouldn't be threatened by me, frankly, right? Yeah, smart man. Um, and I just kept going back to school to figure out what was going on. Yeah, I headed up my first job. I was head of a computer room, and they talked about rat fixing, and I thought they were taking these animals to the vets by their tails. And then later on I learned they were taking the disc and they were fixing them. But it's just I was like way out there. What is this stuff? But I just went back to school every single semester, just trying to learn what I could. And then Lotus Development hired me, which was great. Apple Computer hired me, and so I started to really get to know what I was doing. Um, but there was a drive in me. I come from a family of artists, and so there was a drive within me to create. So I walked into an art studio in my 40s and said, I love color. I want to paint, teach me. And this wonderful artist, Pat Lutz, wonderful teacher, taught me how to paint. And so I started doing shows with my family on the artwork, and so that got in there. And then I bebopped between consulting and startups, and startups keep going under, and then I go consulting and back and forth, and I took time off to try to be an artist, but I realized I couldn't keep a roof over my head at that point, so I went back to high tech. But during one of the times I was in between startups, my personal trainer said, "You'd make a great personal trainer." And I thought, oh, that would be fun. Yeah, that's I guess my weakness. Oh, that would be fun. Let's go do that, right? So I studied and I became an ACE certified personal trainer. And then again realized, I wasn't going to be able to keep the roof over my head. So I went back to high tech. But I continued keeping the art and the training on the side. And then at another point, I was so sick. I had been working at the Washington Post during an election year, and it was hectic, and the servers were crashing. I had to fix everything, and bleh. And so after a year and a half of that, I was beat. I wanted a new career, and someone said to me, "You'd make a good therapist." And at the same time, the IRS made a mistake in my favor and gave me a nice check. So here I was, right? Oh, what the heck? So I thought at least I can go get my master's, and worst comes to worst, I could teach. But I loved it. I loved the courses. I loved practicing therapy. It was just really great. Except when I graduated and looked at how much they offered me. I was like, how can people live on that? And they said, well, usually they have a husband or they still live at home. I was like, no, that's not going to work. So I kept that as a part-time thing, and I went back into go high tech. Thank you, high tech, for my house. So so it's been like that, back and forth. And I always wanted to write a book, and I wrote a program learning textbook once that a high school actually is, well, they used it for a while, when program learning textbooks were all the rage, and do this answer, go to this page. They're a pain to write, but uh, and when my mother passed away, um, I found a box full of letters, that she had written home to her parents when she was overseas with my dad. My dad was an airline pilot, and he had been working for Alaskan Airlines, who contracted out to the newly founded state of Israel on a thing called Operation Magic Carpet, a highly hush hush thing at the time. And they were flying refugees into Israel, the second wave of refugees into Israel. And Israel hired Alaskan Airlines that was going bankrupt to help do this. And my mother flew over there and married my dad over there, and was over there for about a year and wrote these letters home, which really gave an interesting insight into my mother. And I so I actually was just journaling at the time.
Mm.
And then at the end, I thought, this was really helpful to me to go through this process. And then, I was going to two different therapists. Right? It was like, and, I'm just going to put it out there. And because maybe somebody else who's lost their parent, because the mother daughter bond and the father son bond, very tight bonds, maybe they can get some solace from it. And I've actually heard from people who have. And so it's completely unedited. It's just boom out there, and Amazon floating, um, periodically selling copies. Um, and that, so there was this writing bug that lived in me, but it wasn't until I was starting to consider really retiring yet again, from high tech, when I thought I want to write a Russian spy novel, because I've worked in Russia. I was a Cold War vet, so know a bit about Russia, and I thought this would be really fun. But I want something, because a lot of the thrillers that um, I read, they don't have a lot of depth of character. They're exciting. You get to run through many places and
Mm.
shoot people. But as a therapist, I wanted to have flawed characters who are real people who also ran through nice places killing people. Um, so that first book, Moscow Nights Return, just blasted out. I mean, I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And the title itself is a play on this wonderful haunting song, Moscow Nights, um, that has, it's played on a violin. It's just so Russian. You can just see it's sipping some vodka. And we used to go to this place where we sip vodka, ate blinnies, and a guy with a violin would come around and play it. So that's how the title of the book came to
Mm.
be. And after it spilled out, I had some people read it and they liked it. So then I thought, well, I'll get an editor and really do this upright. So I got a wonderful editor who taught me so much about writing. She's actually editing book 4 for me, so that's great. And uh, she I just loved working with her. I loved what her how she helped me get the book more a little more cohesive and you know, as a math major, math and chemistry, what did I know about point of view, right? So um so anyway, and then you know, people are just people like it. You know, they're after book 1, I you know,
Mm.
I held book 1, 2, and 3 because I wanted the editing to be cohesive on all 3 of them. And anything found in book 3, I could ripple back to 1 and you know, vice versa. So I could just really keep the consistency of the characters, the voices, etc. Um, and so I thought, you know, while she was doing book 1, book 2 spilled out. And then and she had to go handle
Nice.
personal stuff, so I had another editor while she was editing book 2, book 3 spilled out. And I was just like, right? And so it's been that process of overlapping books still coming out. The characters just aren't done yet. You know, I thought first it'd just be a one book, one and done. And then it's like,
Mm.
okay, well, a trilogy, that sounds good. Do a trilogy. And now it's a series, and I don't know how many there'll be, but um I've got people asking me, where's book 4? I'm I'm getting there, you know.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. Thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. What would you say are some of the benefits having an experience with a military experience and a psychotherapist background? What kind of those experiences helped with the narrative of writing a spy thriller?
Well, I think especially since I wanted flawed characters who were real. As a therapist, you know, I dealt with some pretty heavy duty people who had some of whom had done things that other people might say are bad or illegal, but um, you know, you get to as a therapist, you get to love your clients. If you don't love your client, then I mean, love in definitely a platonic way. If you any other way is not, you shouldn't be a therapist. But if you don't really find things in your client to love, you can't work with them, right? Because you really and so as I was writing and these people were developing, you know, I found that one of my assassins, Anatoly, loves pastries and you know, it's just so human that you know this guy, you know, just he's pastry driven, and you know, it's really bringing out those the humanity in these people who you know, by whatever reason, whether it's how they grew up or you know, how they were indoctrinated, you know, they are doing what they consider a job. I mean, in book 4, I even have one guy interviewing assassins, just like I would have as a
Mm.
manager interviewed people at work, right? It's you know, so it's a sort of that came in, and being a therapist I think really helped me with my character development. You know, being in the Navy, you know, I set the background for some of these people in the Cold War, and I think also being in high tech, right? So I've got the Cold War techniques, but then I've also got high tech and all of the high tech techniques in there too, from my high tech
Mm.
days. So there's bits and pieces. I think whenever you write, um, you know, it really you do bring you into the story in some way, and you bring in your experience, so I think there's a lot of my experience that has filtered through into the book.
So, my next question for you then is that at first blush, it would appear that your background in the military helped you create the backdrop to the story, where your background as a therapist helped you develop your characters. But switching it around a bit, how did your background as a therapist help you create the backdrop of the story?
Hmm. That is a good question. I think it had more to do with the characters um, and the way the characters kept real, and knowing your characters. Like
Hmm.
this, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had written something, and the main protagonist, Elda, never would have done that. It was a very mean thing, and sure, Elda could kill people, but Elda's not mean. Elda's very patriotic and does things
Right.
for her country, for her job. She's not mean, and so um, I think it did help um, with some of the ways the storyline moved, because I think the characters helped move the storyline.
Right. Now, did you, as you were writing these books, did Elda kind of go off in a direction you weren't planning, and you're like, we'll just see where we're going with this?
Yeah, they all did. The one that really got me in the book one is Karina, and Elda is over there trying to save her friend Karina. And Elda has found the perfect way to get Karina out of the UK. She's located a sub base. She's dealt with the commander. She's got them a ride out, right? And Karina has just spent a lot of time in a container in the darkness and confined. And Karina said, no. And Beth, the author, said,
Hmm.
yeah, yes, I've spent all this time researching this. I got this. It's perfect. And Karina went, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going under the water in something like no windows, not doing it. It was like we had this fight for about a week and she won. It was like, okay, it made sense. If I had been in her shoes, I would have done the same thing. Okay, I get it.
So, how did your background also kind of help create some authenticity to some of the spycraft techniques that were depicted in the book?
Oh yeah, I think having been a Cold War vet, you sort of absorb some things that maybe you shouldn't have absorbed. So, I think you have that, and then as a high tech person, you've got, you're always, building server farms to make sure no one's tapping into stuff and that your software is secure. So I think there's espionage in both areas, right? In both high tech and companies, and in the Cold War. So I think that the two things sort of came together with this team that has a mix of skills from, the high tech area and computer wizardry, as well as, the like Elda will
Mhm.
use computers, but she still stores things on paper too. And if there's something really, really sensitive, she's not going to put it online. And that's interesting because she's smart, she's
Right.
computer savvy, but she doesn't trust that anything with the internet connection is secure.
So, as we mentioned, your first book was Moscow Nights Return, which
Mm-hmm,
came out in 2023. Then you came out with Moscow Misdirection, which came out in February 2024,
mm-hmm.
and then Moscow Madness came out in this past April 2024. And so before we started recording, did I hear this right? You actually are, as you say, working on a fourth book that kind of goes with the same
Yeah.
alliteration?
Yeah, and it's not like I can write a book a month. I wrote, those three books over the period of about 2.5 to 3 years, and held them to put them out together, staggered like
Right.
that. But I did write
Okay.
book four, which is at the editors and will be out later this year. So, I think in hindsight, the expectations were from people that, oh, Beth can just whip out another book in 3 months. Um, it takes me longer than that. My editor takes 2 months for the first pass. So, it all adds up. But I actually am. I just started a page of ideas for book five. So book four comes
Wow.
back from the editor on Friday, and I'll dive into that and relive that book, give it back to the editor, and then I think I'll pick up book five. I got interrupted with a couple of art shows because my sister is a very
Right.
accomplished artist. She's up in New York, which is art mecca, and she wanted to do the Macy Woman Art Show, which is an art show I had done years ago with my grandmother's paintings, my mother's paintings, my sister's paintings, and mine, to show the generation of Macy artists. And after my mother died, we stopped doing it. And my sister said, I want to do it again. So then it was like, oh my God, I don't have anything recent. So I had to paint up a storm to get a new collection to show. So that sort of slowed down book four a bit.
Right. Your books are getting increasingly larger and larger. Like the first book was around 300 pages. The next book was around 400.
Yeah,
And then Moscow Madness was a little over 500 pages.
I know. I know. Here comes the tomb. Ah, this is book seven. Um, I, I don't know. It just I can't shut up. I think with book three, I thought, well, this is it. It's the end of the trilogy. I have to finish. Um, but then there's book four. It's shorter. It's back down to more 300 something pages.
Were there any tertiary characters that sort of turned into more major characters as the series progressed?
Yeah, in all of the books, some people just cameo and come and go, and
Right.
others get killed, and later on you regret. You go, oh, I could use that character. Why did I kill him off? Because they were nasty. I wasn't in the mood. Um, but especially the British characters who are just they do a cameo in book one, and all of a sudden we start to get to know them in book two,
Mm,
and so they grow through book two and book three, and you get to know them more and what their lives are like, and so that's kind of fun. I didn't think after book one I'd use them again, but I liked them. And there was a chance in book two, because book one,
mm,
you've got, teams of spies pitted against each other. Book two, everybody has to work together against a common foe. And it brings interesting dynamics too. And I thought, well, why not bring the British into that and use this couple? Um, and book book
mm,
three, um, uh, you get to know some like Elda more, you get to know Tosh more. Um, some of the characters don't have like Elda's a protagonist, so she really holds the fort. She's kick asses type of woman, but Tosh, you get a sense of, but you don't really know him because he's very quiet and he holds things close to his chest. So he actually, it's been interesting to get to know him over the books as he appears more and more of a character.
So Beth, any final comments for our listeners?
Well, it's summer. I've been told that good summer reads, um, available on Amazon, Walmart Books Online, Barnes and Nobles, Apple Books, and Ingram Sparks. So go at it.
And if people want to learn more about you as an artist and also as an author, they could go to bethmacy.com. That's a good site to go
Yep.
to.
Yeah, that's my, in fact, I was just looking at it when you had it there, and I have to update it a little. I do my all my own websites, and because I've said that the trilogy will be released, and I'm gonna fix that. But yeah, that pops off on, you can see my videography website, my author website, my artist website, and also uh, I think the photography's on there somewhere too. So it just pops off to the different websites.
Right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Beth. And listen, you got to come back on when book 4 comes out.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah, I'll drop you a line. And enjoy Vermont. It's a lovely place. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Beth. I was in the so when I was overseas, I worked for Doctors Without Borders overseas,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was working. I was in logistics, and yeah, so I did a lot of logistics. So my job was to making sure like things were coming through customs and stuff like that. And the doctor was from Uganda. The finance director was from France. The country director was from Toronto. She was from Canada, and so it's a perfect mixture of all people from different countries.
Hmm.
And the doctor asked me, said, did the drugs come in yet? And I said, no, not yet. And he says, excuse me? And I thought it was one of these doctor things, like he didn't like the answer. And I said, not yet. And he goes, what? I said, not yet. And then finally it was the Canadian who said, he said not yet. And she goes, oh, I had no idea what you were saying. Because in in New England we have that glottal stop. So
Yep.
she just kept making fun of me by saying, like, going, nah, yeah, nah, yeah. I'm like, because I never pronounced the T's. And
Yep.
anybody from New England completely understood what I was saying, but nobody else understood. Like, you talk about the culture piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.